Smart 24, driving business.
Thank you so much. Good morning, dear viewers. This morning, we are blessed once again to come to you with The Point. My name is Dr. Joseph Tindeba, and we are blessed once again to be with our guests. And on the left, we have Mr. Paul Kawanguzi. He will introduce himself as we go on with our program today. And we are blessed also again to be with Dr. Lawrence Muganga. He is the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University. Our topic of discussion as the point for this weekend program is what education East Africa deserves to end unemployment and poverty. Dear guests, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to introduce yourselves to the viewers. And I believe you are going to have a very good program to run from this time up to 10:30. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. Good morning, viewers. My name is Dr. Lawrence Muganga. I'm privileged to be hosted here on The Point. I look forward to sharing with you what I think is good for the education of our country and that of East Africa and the continent at large. So thank you. Just wishing you the best to stay healthy all the time.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, good morning, viewers. My name, as usual, is Paul Kawanguzi. I am blessed to be part of this program. Dr. Tindeba, thank you so much, and the management of Smart TV for already thinking about me and actually inviting me here to have a discussion, to have a discourse about the state of affairs in our country, in our continent, in the East African community. And I'm confident that at the end of the day we shall have a few solutions if others can actually pick them. You know, there's talking and other people don't pick anything from what we shall be discussing. But what I trust is that people are watching. Policy formulators are actually looking, especially members of parliament. I see them here. You know, they are watching. So I suspect that what we are going to deliberate will actually impact on the lives and the livelihood of the people of East Africa, especially Uganda, where unemployment is quite higher. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
For a brief introduction, dear viewers, this is an interesting topic of discussion, The Point, and looking at education. Our passion, especially as we look ahead, to be the solution of the current existing problems in African continent, and basically Uganda and East Africa. Unemployment remains a challenge. And we again admit that we have not yet reached a level where we are no longer lamenting or questioning why should our countrymen and women, our young children, our young ones, the new generation, continue to struggle with how we can come out of poverty. A program like this gives us a reminder that what the former transformational leaders, the likes of Mahatma Gandhi and also Nelson Mandela, they gave emphasis, as I'm not citing or quoting what they stated, that education, in summary, education the key, is the pillar. If we are to transform our society, transforming our society from poverty to a wealthier society, transforming our society without lamentation of such problems related with unemployment. For a brief background, we look at East Africa. In this case, at first, we had some countries which were referred as East African countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, in the 1962. On the way, we're blessed to add on other countries, Burundi, Rwanda, and Southern Sudan. Very soon, we are about, or we have already either done so, to include the Democratic Republic of Congo. And again, for review or for a background of this discussion, we know that the education which we inherited of now, it's not the one which was in the formulation in accordance to the African context. Education, dear guests, the best of my understanding, it should always be an education from childhood to adulthood, to be the education that responds to the challenges of the society, of which has been a quite big challenge leading to policy formulators and implementers to make educational curriculum reviews. Today, this morning, we find it very much important to look at how best, what education East Africa deserves to end unemployment and poverty. Uganda has attempted to bring in some policies which is to back up the process of solving the unemployment problem and poverty. But the curriculum, which I know, I will not go into those details, they have tried to look at our curriculum. In other countries, they have also tried to look at their curriculum. I got an opportunity to lecture in the university, some universities of Rwanda, and I was interested to lecture at a certain point a course unit which was referred as competence-based curriculum. It was referring to skills. It was referring to how you identify a child from the childhood, how you identify our young ones and suit them where they can excel better. Dear guests, with that brief introduction, I will come into this discussion. We internalize and look how we can have the education which is not only imposed on us, but which we believe, according to the existing policy and with what we recommend, that can help us to take our nation to the next level without the challenges of unemployment and poverty. You're welcome once again, Dr. Lawrence Muganga, and being the Vice Chancellor, we are very much happy that we are going to benefit a lot from you in this discussion, and we pray that we'll continue to partner with you every Saturday. This will be the point of education. From the left, let's first hear from our colleague, Mr. Paul Kawanguzi, and thereafter you shall receive from you. You have 7 minutes to give your point of view.
Okay. Thank you so much. You've quoted several other fathers of ours in Africa. One of the persons that talked serious about education is actually the late Nelson Mandela, who believes that once you don't give education, there's no future for a kid. So we believe that fast forward, we need to fast track the number of children that are not actually accessing education. We need to look at the number of people, the number of children that are not accessing formal education, because what you're talking about, education is both formal and informal, first of all, and we need to emphasize that. But what basically you're talking about is an issue of formal education. We realize that a number of people, especially if you go to the statistics, many people, for example, many kids have actually dropped out of school due to COVID. And of course, there are a lot of things that happened. You've seen, first of all, that people had to be promoted without actually going through formal classes. For example, you would see somebody who was in P1 being promoted to P3 because he missed 2 years. I think these are very important. We need to put this into perspective also and look at, because now we're looking at the quality, the kind of education that we're getting. We need to look at the enablers of education, for example, people in position to for example, get good quality education. For example, let's look at the structures. We need to look at the teachers, the gadgets that are used in teaching. These are enablers. Mm-hmm. So after putting that into perspective, for me, you realize that we have many people, first of all, that are well educated, but this education is not evenly distributed, for example. We also need to put that into perspective. That if you go back to your village in Rwanda and you ask yourself how many people possess certificates, say, in primary education, maybe certificates in building, maybe a bachelor's in education. I mean, the qualifications, actually, there are very few people if you are to distribute. So meaning that there is uneven distribution of education or access to education, for example, in Uganda, if you are to look at it. I'm not even going to, before even you answer the question of whether the education system can actually respond to the challenges of unemployment, there are issues of imbalances in terms of acquisition to education due to certain factors, for example. Mm-hmm. You know that not all people have the competences, for example. If you look at the education sector, few people can actually afford to pay for the education system now in Uganda. Mm-hmm. Very few people. Mm-hmm. So all these are challenges. We have negativities where you go to the mindset change. Mindset where some families don't believe in education completely. For them, they think if they participate in business, they do business, they'd rather excel there instead of wasting money. There's also this notion that there are no jobs in Uganda. You know, it's kind of discouraging people, some people even to access education. Somebody will tell you, I cannot waste my money, there are no jobs in Uganda. But, you know, there was just a simple survey of recent. They were looking for example, parish chiefs in this model, this parish model. But you realize that even in certain parishes, you'd look for these people who have these qualifications and you could not find them. I don't know whether you did a survey about that.
Yes, please.
So there are issues about the education system, but fast forward for me, my issue is, are people even in position to get the current education, the current education that we have, before you look at the quality, whether it can actually respond to the unemployment challenges. The first question should be, are people in position to access education? Accessibility. So I am answering the question and I'm saying not so many actually are accessing, then two, many are dropping out. Many are dropping out, of course, due to the reason I'm giving, the reasons that I've actually given. I've talked about COVID and the new normal, where very many people actually dropped out of education. There is that kind of thinking, that mind that, for example, there are no jobs in Uganda, that if you go attain maybe a certificate, you're just wasting time. You'd rather go business and be there. Then you have attitudes, for example, you realize that there are societies that believe would rather actually survive in other systems than in education. If I go open up a small shop, I can survive. If I go and trade in, say, produce, I can actually survive and get much more money than somebody who is... Actually, back in our village, my village is an agricultural village. They grow tomatoes. So we grew people getting, actually fruits and vegetables. So we grew when people could actually venture there and get a lot of what? They could actually get a lot of money. You know, this influenced people. It had a very big bearing on who goes for education and who doesn't go for it. So before I go into the East African perspective, we need actually to understand the Ugandan sense.
Right.
We are having schools that are not, you've seen pictures even on social media showing you the environment, where, for example, our kids go to school too. You've seen sometimes the quality they have given, for example, reports. I have seen the reports where they are telling us not so many teachers actually could pass, could actually pass even the P7 papers. Not so many teachers. If you subject them to sit for those papers, few people could even, few teachers, primary teachers could actually pass them. Now, we need to see, are we being taught by the rightful people? Is the problem, for example, in universities, if you have to check, I am blessed actually to be having the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University here. I have a problem, for example, with some universities, some private universities, even public universities, but basically private universities, many of them, some of them, I'm not saying Victoria University. But you realize that these are institutions that have been established, but if you go to how they will pay the lecturers, it's a problem. So the lecturers end up actually trading the bucks for money to survive. Somebody has a first class, but when you ask that person actually to defend the first class, he cannot actually defend it. Somebody only gets a paper with a first class, but if you look at the quality of that person, present him before a panel of an interview, that person will not give you the quality in that paper that is having. So there is a problem that we need to actually synchronize and ask ourselves where it is actually coming from. But for me, first of all, the education system that we are having, I am actually happy that there was a review of the curriculum. That is very important. To the extent that now they want the education system to be skill-based. That you study but having a skill. Dr. Joseph and the viewers, people know, you know, we are having students getting out. Somebody will tell you, I have done a postgraduate diploma in project planning and management. But ask that person to develop a mere concept. That person cannot even develop what? A concept. Because, you know, it is an issue of presenting papers. I really don't know where the problem is actually coming from. You know, we're having people who are trained, for example, who said, I'm an HR expert. But if you ask him, can you do a human resource management plan? You cannot even do it. You know, you get out of the university when you can't do anything. You're a teacher, you said you have a teaching background. But when you present a teacher before a classroom, that person cannot even teach. You know, we're asking ourselves, how do we get better? Because now, before you get employment, because now the world is very competitive. Your skills must be selling. You must be having skills that actually shout out. These days we are using what we call competitive advantage. What are you good at? Because they will ask you that question. So many people are getting generic qualifications. I have a master's in this, I have a bachelor's in this. We also have lawyers, for example. You say a lawyer going to court, but can't even add up the law. I think you're getting the whole thing.
Yes, sir.
You know, we are having, because I don't know where it is actually coming from, but you know, it is a question of us asking ourselves, are we really giving the rightful education to our children? Even these institutions of learning, are we giving the rightful education to our people, the rightful skills? Because apart from talking about vocation, because people understand skills in terms of maybe vocationalization, it's not like that. I am saying, if you're saying you have skills in report writing, can you write a report? Because this is actually what is going actually to employ you. So we are having half-baked students, for example, leaving universities and other institutions of learning. Somebody leaves a university, cannot even write a CV, cannot actually design a better CV to present to somebody who is actually going to give him or her employment. So these are serious issues for me. Before even we talk about the curriculum, we need to look at what there is now. I think we need to address them if you are to be competitive in East Africa, for example. You do see, for example, in areas of, say, hotel management. You know, this is an issue that is actually very simple, but you ask yourself, why are Ugandan hotels, for example, and restaurants employing Kenyans here? Because for them, they believe they are the best when it comes to what?
Others employing Indians.
No, I'm talking about East Africa, for example.
Yes.
Why are they doing it, for example? You know, at one time, our education system used to be the best here. The Ugandan education system used to be the what? The best in ranking. That's why you'd see actually many Kenyans coming here, many Tanzanians coming here to attain education here. Actually, I last knew of this movement around early 2000s. You'd have many Kenyans coming here. I think even South Sudan would actually attract a lot of markets. I think something has to be done in improving our quality so that we remain competitive. Because for me, I believe that one of the ways we can actually have resources for this, you can even have foreign exchange coming here in Uganda, is by making sure that we better education system, so we strengthen the systems and we give the best quality, so that we can actually attract foreign exchange. You would see, I did, for example, a master's in economic policy management from Makerere, but we would see people from Rwanda, students from Rwanda coming to do it from here. No, when they come with money. They spend here. They spend. So strengthening our education system, before even I talk about East Africa, it should be our number one priority, because it is one way through which we can actually develop. Because it fights unemployment indirectly when you, for example, improve the education system in this way, for example. When a student comes from Kenya, he will spend here, he will sleep in a hostel. He or she will sleep in a hostel. So that hostel is paid for. Now you realize, so you'd ask yourself, the person who constructed the hostel, where did he buy the materials from? You know, it's a cycle that actually flows. So you're having a system that the money that this person is going to begin to bring from Kenya is going to trickle down to the local what? To the local person. The hardware person gets this money. The wire person is, for example, employing many people. So we need first to strengthen our education system here in Uganda, say that it is attractive. It becomes very competitive in East Africa. So that it can actually attract foreign exchange. Because we can trade in education as a service. That's right. Yes, we can just trade in education as a service. You've seen how expensive it is, for example, to go and attain education in the UK, in the US. That's right. How much money you spend. Spend a lot. I saw yesterday on social media, one of the kids of one of the political leaders of the opposition was going to attain a master's in some university. But I saw the quotation as $40,000. $40,000. That's too much money. Now, if that money is brought here, if we can actually establish ourselves as a leading center of excellence here, as the #1 center of excellence in East Africa, so that we can actually tap the East African market. We know people from Congo will come, from Rwanda will come, from South Sudan, Kenya, Tanzania. I mean, we can develop and also fight what? Fight unemployment.
Yes, sir.
So typically, and ideally speaking, we need to deal with the setbacks, the challenges that I'm talking about. Are we having the rightful people that are training us? You can imagine. You know, I refused to do physics because of a teacher who had actually almost failed physics. And he was actually the one who was actually teaching me during that time.
He failed physics and was teaching you physics.
I think you're getting all things.
Yeah.
So you know, my mind was actually, because asking him how many points did you get, he will not even give a positive story. But you know, it is a policy issue. We've had to see education as one of the most lowly paid teachers are the low paid professions in Uganda.
Yes.
Can you make it the number one profession?
Number one.
Like you see in Germany. Everyone almost wants to be a teacher. I think you're getting the whole thing. Yeah, can we prioritize it so that we give them what is actually deserving? You see people who wish to go to law now going into what? Into teaching. Because now you need to have the rightful quality. I am just, you know, I always ask myself, why would you want because it is actually very, very unusual that you have somebody who got maybe doing that, who got called A's going to education. It was very unusual. Very unusual. They would go for law, they would go for those very good courses. I think you're getting the whole thing.
1 minute as you conclude your submission.
So, this is a policy matter where the Minister of Education actually needs to put a lot of what? A lot of emphasis. And make sure that, one, we pay our teachers so well. Because this is actually going to improve the what? It's going to improve the quality.
Yes,
can we give them enough money? Can it become competitive? Like you see people fighting to join the medical professions. You see somebody saying, I must go for pharmacy because when you go there, the job is what? Yeah, at least the payments are fine. Because can we drive them there? Can we attract them? And say, now teachers are going to be the best paid. And this has to be deliberate. Because if we are trying to say we need to look at education as a service, we need to establish ourselves as a country, as a center of excellence, knowing the benefits that we can tap into the East African market and solve unemployment. For me, this is actually more better.
Yes,
can we pay our lecturers well, Mr. Vice Chancellor? Can we pay them well? So that they stop trading marks in school, in institutions of learning.
Exactly.
Because now, if a lecturer is not paid, some of them even run with marks for students. You say students, for example, graduating with a first-class degree, but when you really look at the quality, it's not there.
It's not there.
You know, for me, I love law, where we used to have actually the pre-entries for failed DC.
Yes, it's a serious one.
Yes.
It's a serious
because for you come, you masquerade, you have a first-class degree, you fail pre-entry for what?
It's a serious process.
You even go to this and you fail. I think you're getting the whole thing.
Yes.
So for me, we need to have common denominators. A university should operate like banks. They should have a minimum deposit. Because for you to open up a bank, you say you want to start a bank, there is some little money that you must have reserved. But you know, you're having people saying you're offering a service, there's almost gambling in education. I know before I leave this, I know of a university that is actually trading papers on streets.
Oh God.
Can I give you money and can you give me money and I give you a diploma?
My goodness.
I get in the whole thing. Now, how do you, for example, sort unemployment using these papers? So we need to have quality control and quality checks. Because we need to be sure, are people really having the rightful skills? Somebody would say, I am a teacher, put him before class, he cannot actually teach anything. I mean, how would that employ you, for example? So you realize you have natural teachers in many instances. Somebody is a natural teacher, will come and teach well. But we're asking ourselves, why isn't this sector attracting the best of the best? And people running to other professions. I would want to see somebody who would wish to do medicine, saying, no, let me go for teaching. Because I'm being paid 5 million shillings a month. You'll see how people will be running there. It will change the whole story. You'll have the best quality. People from Namagunga and all those best schools where you're taking your kids. You Dr. Tindebo and Dr. Lawrence. You'll see students coming from there. So for me, I think we need to work, policy-wise, we need to work on that. We need to ensure that the structures, the schools where we take our kids, these structural bottlenecks, for example. You look at a school whose teachers can't even sleep nearby. They don't have even housing units. and you expect them to teach well, monitor the children well. You know, it is a challenge, it's a problem.
Thank you.
So we need to do a lot in solving some of those challenges. And for me, I am still looking for example, you know, I come from Jinja, where Jinja used to be a center of excellence for education. Many of these political leaders you see, even your man in Ndugurugunda from Kabale, he proudly having attended education from Dr. Newton Apple, the late. I attended his education from where? From here. So Jinja was a center. It actually what we trade was education. And when you go there, you have traditional schools. And I'm asking myself, why are these? Why is there a drop in the performance of these schools, in the standards?
Thank you.
So we need to work at this out.
Yes, sir. I appreciate so much. I didn't want to interrupt Mr. Paul. His passionate submission, full of content. You deserve to take the whole of it. And for dear viewers, those who are policymakers, and in most cases, there are those who also are sitting on some boards right out from primary level to secondary, then to university. These are serious insights that we need to attend to, not for just a program to interest you to viewers, but to really go into action. I'm pleased to have heard a lot from him. And as he was drawing much of his submission that were based on policy review perspective, of which whether the government here and elsewhere, those who are viewing us, we can take consideration to adopt such a kind of policy insights and recommendation. Doctor, once again, our Vice Chancellor, we are pleased to continue this discussion. And in your point of view, would like to receive also another rich submission, which we are passionately waiting, and the viewers to listen from you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. I don't know after Mr. Kawanguzi, I don't know what I have to add, but
you have a lot to
well done. Yeah. I'm glad, like, that's why I always, I'm a rich advocate, or a strong advocate of following a diversity path. Right now he comes from economics, and then he goes to law. And by the way, there's something we share in common. I also did EPM.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, one of my master's degrees that I have.
That's good.
Yeah, so he put in a very, very good submission to really do a greater kind of prognosis of what is happening in our education situation or system. But let me also first take this opportunity to thank Smart TV for choosing to dedicate an entire show to talk about education.
Exactly.
Because for me, there is one important thing I believe, that education makes everything or breaks everything if you don't handle it very, very well.
Yes, sir.
Now, having said that, also, much as we are talking about problems within the education system, and not only in Uganda, East Africa, or you can stretch it to the entire continent of ours, but let's also first look at a few good things that have been done. For the Ugandan child, for example, we have access, right? Before you talk about quality, at least someone is able to count, read and count, right? That accessibility. There's UPE, USE. At least people can try to go to school, achieve the basic literacy possible, but better than nothing, right? There are issues, yes, and that's the starting point for us. Now, when we talk about education, and there I pause a little bit such that viewers can get the opportunity to understand where are we coming from.
Exactly.
How did we get here?
Exactly.
And how do we get out of this situation?
Yes.
So I want to remind viewers, those who know or those who have even forgotten, that the education system we talk about is almost as old as 150 years.
150 years.
All right?
Yes.
150 years.
Yes.
Now, but the world has not been in place for the world we know, Earth, people living on this planet Earth, they haven't been here for only 150 years.
You're reminding me of the Socrates, you're reminding me of Greece.
Yes.
Okay.
So now I want you exactly. Now that's what I want Ugandans and our fellow East Africans to think, that education has been there before this thing we call education 150 years ago.
Yes, sir.
That's when it started. When did we get it in East Africa? That is even another topic to discuss. It is not 150 years ago, right? So, question is, what was going on before those 150 years? I want you to talk about the philosophers we are thinking about.
The great philosophers.
Which school did they go to?
That's right.
Right? We want to talk about some of the best American presidents that they still cherish and adore. Which school did they go to?
That's right.
There was no school.
There was no school.
There was no school.
Yet finally they became philosophers.
Philosophers, they have shaped the theories
Yes,
that
sir.
we actually talk about today. Albert Einstein, which school did he go to? And do you know how many people praise him for having been a very intelligent man that has shaped some of the things we see today? So now, do you know what they shared in common? It is experience.
Experience.
Learning in a real context. Right? Looking at a problem consistently and trying to figure out what the problem is and what can we do to solve that problem. Now come to Africa. Our ancestors went through something we call indigenous African education. We didn't have school. But would you say that they were not educated? No. How did they survive? How did they take care of their children? How did they look for food?
So they inform education.
When you're about to make things inferior, you start calling them informal, and the white man's things, you call them formal. Right? Why is it that theirs is formal and
so we graduate ours also to be formal?
It was their formal education.
Exactly.
And we abandoned it. And then we embraced someone's education who wanted people who can listen to them and do what they are told to do with that kind of submissiveness. Okay? They didn't need demonstration, strikes and everything. Do what I tell you until I tell you to do. Otherwise, don't do anything else. So that's the education system we have. Right? And it has stayed with us. The unfortunate part that the world has changed. Education has not changed.
Yes.
And let me give you an example. Luckily enough, Mr. Paul is a lawyer. I am a teacher. You're a teacher.
Yes, sir.
If you were given an opportunity and God blessed you with powers to resurrect people, and maybe you go to 1960,
yes, sir,
and you resurrected a doctor, the physician, you resurrected a lawyer, you resurrected a teacher, and maybe an engineer. 4 professions. A
medical doctor.
Yes.
Then an engineer.
An engineer, a teacher, and a lawyer. Right? If you resurrected them today and you brought them back to life, and you told them start living life, there are 2 professions, 2 people that would request to do 2 things. Either they go back to the grave, or they go back to school.
They go back.
And these are the medical doctor.
That's a statement.
And the engineer.
Medical doctor and engineer.
And the engineer. Why?
Science.
Technology has changed this sector.
Engineer, yes.
To the extent that if you disappeared in 1960 and you came back today, you can't become a doctor now. You have to go back and be recertified. You go back and study the technology that is here today. If you are an engineer, the AutoCAD, the everything, you have no clue. You have to go and get yourself computerized again. But bring back our colleagues, teachers, and the lawyers. The court has remained the same. with their white thing. I'm not disrespecting that white wig thing they wear. And the laws remain the same. Now the teacher, the classroom remains the four-angled kind of room with students facing their teacher in rows and columns, and they have a syllabus. They are told, sit down and consume everything I tell you. Once the bell rings, go home or go for lunch. It is the same. For them, they will start from where they stopped. So that is the trouble we have in an education system. Now, Paul says it very well. Today we have a graduate from all different universities. And Ugandans, I should take this opportunity to say, you know what? To apologize to you. It's our fault, we the teachers. We can whine all we want to say that government has not done that. But what have we done? The smallest thing we would do as teachers to change the way we teach, right? So let me tell you what happens. We are letting down this country with the teachers in the name of maybe asking for so much money, a very genuine reason, so much to be paid a living wage, not a minimum wage. That's acceptable. But here is the thing. Being a teacher is a calling for me, right? And I will do what I have to do because a parent has entrusted their child, I'm the second parent beyond them, to make sure that I prepare a good citizen of this country, I prepare a good human capital resource of this country who is able to take care of themselves, who is able to take care of their family, who is able to take care of the community, and who is able to productively serve within their country.
Doctor, I have something to say,
Yes.
which I desire for the benefit of viewers
Yes.
that we reflect on. I have appreciated where you had reached. You will continue.
Yeah, I'm coming. Yes.
And we'll go back to your submission where you stated that we must know where we are coming from. And I'm happy to say that we are going to have even wider discussion over this subject matters. We know education is wider. However, there is something that we cannot leave out without saying, that especially the global intervention into the education which developing countries deserves by making recommendations which derived us to some of the programs the country like Uganda is implementing. For example, universal primary education, then universal secondary education, and which has ushers us either both for private, which is liberalized education, and the public. But there is a challenge that we have faced on the way, and hopefully that the Ministry of Education will carefully attend to this. The kind of setup of these policies, which the kind of our generation we are rising, the young ones who go to primary schools, because my colleague talked about some of us either with ability to not send your child to maybe a universal primary education school, but yet we are all Ugandans. We are all desiring our children to have better education. And in most cases where we have had a challenge, I'm not a product of UPE. I benefited from the education system of Obote. And by that time, indeed, whether coming from a rural area, from my school, which was called St. John's Primary School, we're doing the best. What can we do? This challenge, which is affecting the kind of these programs, which are good for the sake of our people, but yet which you don't want them to be politicized in a way that does not give us the product of a student that will bring to a university. You find someone who studied from a UPE school because of some of the policies which are awkward, like saying that automatic promotion, even if my colleague was saying, even if you get whether maybe 10 marks, you are promoted. And finally it happened that one makes it to a secondary school. And finally they send him to, by the way, you are doing a great work. Would you please bring that knowledge that we look at how we can really bridge that gap? Yeah. It is a challenge.
Now, let me pick it up from where you have just stopped. And I'll get a chance to go back to the aspect of the half-baked graduate later on. Now,
you have 4 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So, the situation we face right now is everything we have gotten wrong when we define how our education should be delivered. Do you know what we have gotten wrong? We are thinking that for someone to become a great performer, for someone to become successful in life, you have to have gotten good grades, good scores. You got 90%, but who determines that aggregate 4 that I get in primary 7, they are going to make me a successful person? Dr. Tindyewa, let me ask you, where is your P7 UCE certificate?
By that time, they were not giving us certificates.
Okay. Do you use it anywhere?
I don't use it. Even I don't have it.
Mr. Paul, where is your UCE certificate and where do you use it?
Apart maybe from touching it, maybe when
You're applying for a job.
you're applying for a job.
In your real life, where do you use it?
Nowhere.
Thank you. Now, had you gone through primary 1 to primary 7 without being examined, wouldn't you be speaking English if it is necessary?
Of course I would.
Now, that is where we are getting it wrong.
That is serious.
Right?
Yeah.
Why is it that the countries that gave us an education system and we embraced it as something great no longer examine their kids from kindergarten to P7 if you wish, or grade 7 or grade 6? Why is it that they have walked away from examining children?
Yes.
And for us, we are cherishing that. It is now the monetary value that comes with it.
Yes.
The moment you give an exam and the UNEB releases results and you have 100 kids who got 4, then you're going to advertise. Do you want to pass? Yes. Do you want to go to senior 1 with flying colors? Yes. Send your child to my school. And once your kids, 100 of them have 4s, it means now you can set the price. Right? And then you keep on increasing because the parameter that shows performance is those 4s. So, but the moment you remove them, you are equalizing all schools. There will be no good school, no bad school. Teachers will not look for good school or a bad school. And parents will not take kids in a good school or a bad school. Other countries that are developed, if I live in, say, let's assume this is Nakasero, I am not allowed to take my child beyond my boundaries. I have to stick to a school in my boundaries.
Your boundaries.
You are a president or a prime minister, your child will go to that school. And there is not, quote me right, there is always assessment, continuous assessment, formative assessment, entrusted to the teachers to assess these kids. But there is nothing like a national exam of these children. Let me tell you the danger of what we are doing with school. All right? And why we need to ditch the system the way it is and embrace a better system like other people who...
So we need an overhaul. We need an overhaul.
Like people usually stick to the word reform. We don't need reform. Okay. We need total overhaul or transformation.
Understand.
Now let me tell you what happened. You know NASA, this is an agency in America. Those people who go to the moon, where, you know those ones. The space agency, NASA, in the United States, they attract who they call the best people, brains in the world. Now they have come to a time where they don't get those people. The intelligent people they thought they can bring in and train, they no longer get them. So now they commissioned a study. When they commissioned a study to find out what happened to creative people, imaginative people, problem-solving people, where are they? So they commissioned a study. And they started with 5-year-olds. It was a longitudinal study. 5-year-olds administered kind of a tool, a questionnaire that would determine a child's imaginative capabilities, creative capabilities, and problem-solving abilities. Right? Guess what did they get? That 98% of those kids, how many kids? 1,500 kids, 5-year-olds, 4 to 5 years. They realized that 98% of those kids were still have imaginative power, creative power, and problem-solving abilities.
I believe with viewers were listening to those
Yes.
great words.
I want
Imaginative power.
Imaginative power.
Yes.
Creative
power.
And problem-solving power.
And problem-solving power.
When they are still 4 to 5 what?
That's a complete education now. I'm
Yes.
very much convinced.
Now, they said, okay, let's test them at 10.
At 10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
All right?
Yes, sir.
At 10 years, they came back after 5. So longitudinal study. The same kids were administered to the same tool. Only 32% had imaginative power,
32% had imaginative
creative power, and problem-solving power.
Yes, sir.
They came back at 15, Dr. Tindiewa, at 15 years, the same kids. Now, these kids, those who had like all of them, 7%.
The doctor, you are making powerful statements. And for the benefit of viewers, so that we can borrow that model, is a very good one. I'm very much touched. How we can, impart
Now,
the same kind of approach.
Give me a second. Give me a
sir.
second. When they came back at these kids to test them at 15, 7% had imaginative power.
7%.
And had creative power and problem solving. Now they came back when they are 20. And then infused in even other adults. They collected data from 1 million people. Only 2%, Ugandans, only 2% had imaginative power, creative power, and they also had problem solving abilities. 98% had lost what? All these important skill sets. Now, do you know what they had in common? The only thing they had in common was that they had been going to school. So
all of them were going
all
to
of
school.
them had gone to school.
Yes.
And the school had educated them out of their important assets. Imaginative power, creative power, and problem-solving abilities. Yet those are the skill sets that we are looking for. The schools, we say we take our kids to the good ones, the bad ones as you may want to call them. The only thing they are doing is to kill the creativity, the imaginative abilities of a child, the problem-solving abilities of the child. Those are the schools that we have. And we have to do something different.
That's great.
Right?
Yes, sir. I want to appreciate your great submission, sir. And as I told you, there is a deliberate move. You talked about also the area, the need for embracing technology, which is very important. And again, to have a mind change by all of us, dear parents and viewers, not to believe that it's only the best education when we are thinking about going to Europe and adopting maybe what we refer as their formal education, which they imposed on us. By the way, they imposed it on us.
Correct.
In 18, when they colonized Uganda, they colonized Kenya, and they said this is the kind of education that you should do, take up. So you referred to the need to embrace technology. That is very important, and which should not start at a time when one is going to the university, and that's when bringing course units of teaching computer. But someone from right away from childhood, when you go to secondary, primary school, then a kid is just already covered with computer science. I appreciate some of the private schools which have gone ahead. By the way, I wouldn't be an advocate for private or the liberal and the private education, but there are some of the things they are trying to bridge the gap.
Correct.
You take your kid to a primary school and right away the kid begin to be used with computer. That is very important. We took note of that as very much important. Then also, you also talked about imaginative power. Going to creative power, problem-solving power.
Because those rule the country.
Yes.
They rule the world.
This links me to the curriculum, the revised curriculum of the Republic of Rwanda. I have some experience with the education of Rwanda. And deliberately, which I also can request our country, we're also doing what we can as a country, trying to do best, but we must take deliberate steps if we are to redeem our country from the challenge of unemployment and poverty. The imaginative power is being supported by a policy in Rwanda and a creative power. By the time as you were talking about, you finish P7, then before you are saying you are a graduate, I mean you are a certificate holder of senior 4, you are already aligned to what is your base of imaginative power, what you are able to do, and the power of creativity, which is missing. You find one is a graduate, as I relate to the discussion, the submission made by Mr. Paul. You are a graduate, but if we say maybe you are identified area of specialization, if it is engineering, and by the time you are completing senior 4, but by the time you finish senior 4 with your physics, you cannot even assemble a motorcycle.
Dr. Joseph.
Yes, sir.
In average, there is I know people are watching and they know the story.
Yes, sir.
There is a regiment who actually achieved the certificate, a diploma in mechanical engineering.
2 minutes and doctor, then you go for a break.
So there was a problem. I think a tractor was passing and maybe it had a mechanical fault. So they called the guy who had gotten a diploma in mechanical engineering. So he said, no, let me go for my books. I check well, because they were asking him, can you fix this for us? Because you are the expert of the village.
Of the village.
He says, no, let me go and check with my books. So he brought a wheelbarrow of books to check. I think you are getting those. This is what we are talking about. Leaving a university, leaving a training institution, when you are empty. And we're asking ourselves, why is it so? Why is it that the cognitive power, the problem-solving power, is being killed? I think you're getting the whole thing.
Well, let me answer for you that very question. But I also wanted to us to remind ourselves and the viewers that it is unfortunate that 98%, this is research, empirically researched and approved, not contested. 98% of what we study, we never get to use in life.
98%.
So we survive on 2%.
It's true.
All right?
I didn't train to be here a host.
So thank you. So 98%, as you take your child to any school, we never get to use in real life. But you talked about what is happening. Let me tell you, personally, I am pleased that the Minister of Education is actually very emphatic that authentic learning, competence-based learning, I don't remember who talked about it.
That
talked about it.
Yes, please.
Is now infused in our curriculum. Okay? Now, question is, how are we implementing it is another question. But at least we are at the starting point. Now, let me answer Paul's question. Here is the thing, how we got there, the problem. The problem we have today is this simple. How do we teach these students to get out the way they get out? Now, here is what happens. When Lawrence goes to university and performs very well, gets a first class, in the other world of being obsessed with grades, and I get a first class.
Yeah, these days we are obsessed.
Right? Yeah, we are obsessed with grades. If I get a first class, the university is going to say, you know what, hey, Lawrence, you got a first class, stay here and teach. All right? Teach business, international finance, for example. Then I stay, teach international finance or international business as a teaching assistant. Then they will even support me to do a master's degree. And then I come back to the classroom. Then they say, okay, you have performed very well as a teacher. Go back and study a PhD. I study and come back as a doctor, as we call ourselves, doctor.
Doctorate of philosophy.
Okay, but a doctor of what? Of a textbook. So you are an expert in a textbook and articles and papers. But you have never, sometimes they may even ask a student who has done international finance or international business, give them $100 and ask them, okay, go change it for me. They will ask you, where can I find a Forex bureau? Students of what?
And the student of finance.
And international what?
International.
They are asking you, where can I find a Forex what?
Thank you, doctor.
That is the worst kind of genocide we are doing to these students. And they are not productive to this country, and we will come back with a solution.
That's right.
Actually, doctor is even picking the point from very far. I have asked myself, why is it that Dr. Tingewa can actually manage, you can manage a program, you can even manage somebody's business.
Yes, please.
You can manage a university.
You can.
But tell him to put a small shop of his,
Correct.
It will collapse in 2 days.
That's what
That's
I'm
right.
telling you.
In 2 days.
Thank you.
But somebody is a qualified manager, has been a general manager. You see people, somebody will say, I've gotten pension. Now, if they give him pension, you go and start something.
And that's
It
where,
collapses in 2 days.
That's where now he will tell you,
It collapses in 2
Victoria
days.
University, we chose to do things different.
Victoria University chose to do. I will be coming back
So,
in the
you know,
second round.
you
You
know,
will tell
you
us.
wish to go-
You have to tell us how you do it
Yes,
at
we chose to
Victoria
do
University.
We cannot
Exactly.
tolerate someone who cannot walk the talk.
Thank you. In the next session, we will hear how they do it different at Victoria University, and we also maybe contribute how we should do it best.
Yes.
Thank you so much. See you in the next session. Yeah, it has been good.
Smart 24, driving business.